There's a certain kind of person you hope you never meet in life. The kind that believes laminated rules are more powerful than common sense. The kind who thinks owning a clipboard gives them dominion over other people's land. Around here, we just call that type Karen. And unfortunately, one moved in next door. Now, for context, I own a 20-acre ranch about 15 minutes outside town. The driveway alone is longer than most people's property lines. It curves past a couple of pastures, through a stand of cottonwoods, and ends at my house, which I built myself over a decade ago. I live alone, unless you count the dogs, horses, goats, and a rooster with anger management issues. I like my space. I earned it. Which is why when the new HOA formed half a mile down the hill, a little suburban nest of prefabricated McMansions that sprouted like mold after the developer bought up the adjacent lots, I didn't think much of it. After all, I wasn't part of their little Stepford suburbia. My land was grandfathered out, completely off their grid, with legal records to prove it. But Karen didn't see it that way. Her actual name is Marlene, mid-50s, frosted bob, sunglasses surgically attached to her face, and the type of woman who wears yoga pants but considers stretching a form of rebellion. She moved into the HOA's flagship house, the one right at the entrance, and within 2 weeks had installed herself as president, secretary, and queen supreme of the Cedar Ridge Community Standards Enforcement Committee. She introduced herself to me one afternoon uninvited, stomping up my driveway in $300 walking shoes and holding a clipboard like it was a Bible. I was feeding the goats. "You must be the ranch owner," she said with a smile that looked like it had been ironed on. "We need to talk about your fencing. It's an eyesore and violates community aesthetics." I looked her up and down. "You came all the way up here to critique my barbed wire." "It's rusting," she said, clicking her pen. "And technically, you're adjacent to our zone, which means you're visible to homeowners. We've received complaints." "I bet you have," I said, tossing a flake of hay. "But I'm not in your HOA." "That's debatable," she said, scribbling something. "We're looking into expanding our boundaries." That was my first warning shot. Karen wasn't just the kind of person who liked rules. She was the kind who invented them when reality didn't fit her narrative. Over the next few weeks, things escalated in ways so absurd I almost started thinking I was being pranked. HOA letters began arriving at my gate, folded in plastic sleeves like legal threats dressed up in Office Depot drag. Notice of unapproved livestock. Citation for non-compliant mailbox aesthetics. Warning about unlicensed agricultural activity. Each one more ridiculous than the last. My favorite was the mandatory community landscaping workshop, invite, complete with RSVP card and instructions to bring a positive attitude. I didn't respond to any of them. Why would I? I wasn't in their HOA, and I had the paperwork to prove it. Still, she kept at it, like a raccoon with a grudge and a clipboard. Then one morning, I found a final notice duct taped to my front gate. In bold red letters, failure to comply will result in vehicular access restrictions. I laughed. Hard. Until 2 days later, when I tried to pull into my own driveway and found a gleaming silver Audi parked sideways across the entrance, completely blocking it. At first, I thought it was a delivery driver having a nervous breakdown. But no. There it was, a small laminated sign on the windshield that read, "Private roadway. Access temporarily restricted by order of the Cedar Ridge HOA." I wish I could tell you I was shocked. But honestly, it was so on brand for Karen it felt almost poetic. I parked on the shoulder, walked up to the car, and noticed a little sticky note under the windshield wiper. "See me for access. Marlene," and the smile emoji. The smiley face was underlined twice. Of course it was. Now here's where I should tell you something important. A little fun fact Karen didn't know. I own the only towing company in this part of the county. I don't just mean I manage it. I mean I own it. Every truck, every contract, every grizzled tow driver with a nicotine addiction and a grudge against illegally parked BMWs. All mine. But Karen? She didn't know that. Not yet. And oh boy, was I about to enjoy this. So there I was, standing in front of a shiny, freshly waxed Audi A5, blocking my driveway like it was auditioning for the role of rich person's paperweight. and taped to it was the passive-aggressive equivalent of a middle finger wrapped in pastel stationery. I didn't touch the car. Not because I was afraid of a confrontation. Trust me, I eat confrontation for breakfast, but because I already had a better idea brewing. See, Karen wanted attention. She wanted me to come to her, tail between my legs, begging to be let back into my own property like a kid grounded from their treehouse. But I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. Instead, I made one phone call. Well, technically, I pressed one speed dial. Line 2, Danny, tow ops lead. Danny, I said, already smiling. I've got a premium pickup for you. Audi A5, blocking my driveway. Owner thinks they're above the law. Let's give her a reality check. He laughed. You want this handled the usual way? Nah, I said. Make it gentle, but public. 10 minutes later, I was sitting on a lawn chair near the fence line sipping iced tea when Danny pulled up in the biggest, most gloriously battered flatbed truck we had. It wheezed to a stop like an asthmatic rhino and clanked as it lowered the rig. A couple of HOA folks driving by slowed down, craning their necks. One lady actually stopped to film. Of course she did. Danny got out and gave me a lazy salute. She'll be off the property in 5. You want her impounded or dropped at her house? Oh, I said. Take her straight to the impound lot. Charge her full weekend storage. And note that it was blocking private agricultural access. That should push the fine up. Danny grinned. Love it. While he was hooking the Audi up, I walked over with a little gift I had prepared. A copy of my property survey, a notarized statement confirming I wasn't under HOA jurisdiction, and a laminated card that read, Unauthorized vehicles will be towed at owner's expense. This is your only warning. I zip-tied it to her windshield wiper before the whole car was winched up like a poorly parked trophy. By the time Karen showed up, screeching down the hill in a golf cart that had been illegally modified with chrome rims and a bullhorn, it was already too late. What are you doing? She shrieked, hopping off the cart like a deranged mall cop. That's my vehicle. Danny didn't even blink. Was blocking a private driveway. We have full authorization. See the owner. She turned to me, fuming. Her face was red enough to qualify as a hazard sign. You don't have the right to remove my vehicle. I placed it there under authority of the HOA. You placed it there under the authority of your own delusions, I said calmly. This is private land. I have the documents. Your car was illegally parked, trespassing, and obstructing access. You can't just. I own the towing company, Marlene. That stopped her cold. What? I let it hang there a second. I own the tow company. Every truck. Every driver. Every call in this county for the past 10 years. So yes, I can just. For a moment, she looked like she couldn't process the information. Like her brain was buffering through a tunnel of denial. But this is a community issue. This is about aesthetics. Aesthetics don't override property law, I said. But thanks for the laminated sign. I've added it to my collection. She opened her mouth to fire off some legalese-laced nonsense, but I cut her off. Don't bother with the threats. I've already reported your little stunt to the sheriff's office. And just to be safe, I've got the entire thing on camera, security footage, time-stamped. Danny gave a mock sigh. Shame. That was a nice car. Karen pivoted, trying to rally the few HOA members who had wandered over to spectate. This is an attack on the community. He's an aggressor. He's resisting integration. One guy, Greg, I think his name was, raised a cautious hand. I mean, technically, he's right. That's not our land. We're not supposed to be issuing fines outside the HOA boundary. Karen glared at him like he'd just clubbed a baby seal. Let me make this clear, I said, stepping forward. I'm not your neighbor. I'm not your community member. I'm not part of your HOA. I'm a rancher with legal autonomy, decades of precedent, and zero tolerance for suburban dictatorships. And next time, I added, you block my driveway, I won't tow your car. I'll tow your house. Okay, that last part was a bit dramatic. But judging by the look on her face, it landed just right. Danny drove off with her Audi in tow, and the best part? Karen had to chase it in her little golf cart, sputtering behind it like a bad punchline. But trust me, she wasn't done. Oh no, this was just her opening move. And like any HOA tyrant with too much time and not enough oversight, she was about to double down. which was fine by me. I was already 2 moves ahead. I figured the whole tow your Audi stunt would knock some reality into Karen. Maybe make her retreat back to her cul-de-sac and rethink her life choices. Nope. 2 days later, I woke up to find 3 orange HOA violation flags planted at the base of my mailbox. Yes, actual plastic flags. Like it was a condemned construction site or the scene of some petty bureaucratic crime. Each one had a laminated tag stapled to it. Unauthorized mailbox design. Excessive dust emissions from driveway. Improper use of agricultural space. I stared at them in disbelief, then started laughing. Excessive dust emissions? What was I supposed to do? Pave the whole ranch. But the real kicker came in the mail that afternoon. Certified letter. Stamped and signed. From the Cedar Ridge HOA Enforcement Division. First of all, division implies multiple people. Which is hilarious, because we both knew this was Karen in her guest bedroom with a second-hand printer and too much white wine in her system. The letter read, in part, failure to address these violations may result in enforced remedial action by the HOA, including but not limited to blocking access roads, erecting boundary fencing, and seeking legal injunctions for non-compliance with community harmony standards. Community harmony standards. That phrase made my eye twitch. Now, I could have ignored it, tossed it in the fire pit, moved on. But at this point, I wasn't just defending my land. I was defending principle. Karen wasn't just annoying. She was testing how far she could reach. And I wanted to see just how far she'd fall. So I paid a visit to county records. My property line hadn't changed in 30 years. It was crystal clear. But just for fun, I pulled hers too. And oh, jackpot. Turns out Karen's HOA was technically encroaching on a 12-foot strip of land that was legally mine, running right behind their big shiny entrance sign. So I did what any creative, slightly vindictive landowner would do. I built a fence. Not just any fence, a goat enclosure. With a gate. And I moved 3 of my most stubborn, loudest goats right into that space. I even put up a little sign. Private livestock grazing area. No HOA trespassing. Violators will be screamed at by the goats. Within 24 hours, Karen was losing her mind. I got another note. This one shoved directly into my mailbox, written in aggressive cursive. This is sabotage. You're defacing community property. Remove the animals or face legal consequences. I wrote back. I recommend discussing this with your HOA's legal department, if you can find one. She escalated again. Suddenly, random HOA compliance officers started showing up at the edge of my property. Greg, clipboard guy from earlier, came by with a tape measure and a camera, walking along the fence line like he was auditioning for CSI, HOA edition. He snapped a photo of my barn and muttered, that structure might be out of code. Code for what? I asked. Having character? Karen, of course, followed up with another printed violation packet. Unauthorized structural color scheme. Rustic red, not approved by HOA palette. I almost peed myself laughing. So I invited some friends over. Ranch friends. The kind with big trucks, louder opinions, and absolutely no patience for suburban power trips. We held a barn painting party. Except we didn't repaint it. We just added more red. Red lights, red flags, red lawn chairs. One guy even brought over a life-size plastic steer and painted it crimson. I named it Compliance. Karen called the sheriff. And this? Oh, this was the cherry on top. When the deputy arrived, he took one look at the plastic steer, turned to Karen, and said, Ma'am, he's within his rights. Also, this isn't even your jurisdiction. She demanded to speak to his superior. He pointed at the sky. God. Karen stormed off, face redder than Compliance. But she didn't stop. No. Karen decided it was time to go nuclear. A week later, I woke up to find that someone had installed a gate across the base of my driveway, complete with a keypad entry box, a HOA residence-only sign, and, I kid you not, a solar-powered camera pointed at my road. Let me repeat. She installed a gate. On my driveway. On my land. I stood there, jaw slack, staring at the keypad like it was some sort of psychological experiment. She was trying to lock me out of my own property. This wasn't just a clipboard power trip anymore. This was a full-blown delusion. So I did what any rational adult would do in this situation. I called Danny. "Hey," I said, "you still got that equipment hauler from the fairgrounds job?" "Yeah," he replied. "Why?" "I need a gate removed." "Manual or electric?" "Electric. Keypad. Solar powered. Real fancy." He laughed. "Want it removed or removed?" "Oh, we're going scorched earth," I said. "Make it look like an accident." 30 minutes later, a 6-ton flatbed with a winch arm rolled up to my property. We didn't just take the gate down, we dismantled it like it owed us money. Camera? Gone. Keypad? Smashed. Fence posts? Uprooted and repurposed as firewood. And I sent her a bill. $3,842 for illegal installation, trespassing, unauthorized use of easement, and emotional damages. Okay, that part was mostly for fun. I taped the invoice to a piece of plywood, drove it down the hill, and nailed it to the Cedar Ridge HOA entrance sign. The next day, a small crowd gathered around it like it was some ancient artifact. HOA members took photos. Karen drove by and screamed when she saw it. Like, legit screamed, window down, rage echoing down the road. But here's the thing. She still wasn't done. Because people like Karen don't stop when they're wrong. They stop when they're broken. And I was just getting started. After the gate removal and the public invoice display, most people would have crawled into a metaphorical hole of embarrassment. Karen? She crawled into a legal website and came out swinging with something that she clearly thought would be her checkmate. A cease and desist letter, printed on cheap ivory paper, decorated with a clip-heart gavel, and signed in Comic Sans. The letter, which arrived folded like a high school note and smelled faintly of lavender and desperation, accused me of harassment by agricultural means, intentional disruption of community optics, and my favorite, orchestrated acts of rural intimidation. There was also an attached invoice for $11,278 in damages to HOA morale, whatever that means. It was so absurd, I framed it and hung it in my barn between a vintage tractor ad and a photo of my goat Marvin standing on the hood of a Prius. Now at this point, the story had gone from annoying to performance art. But what Karen didn't realize was that all her grandstanding had consequences. For one, the county started asking questions. See, when you start throwing up gates and planting flags on property you don't own, and you install surveillance cameras facing public access roads, things tend to trigger zoning red flags. Especially when you do it without permits. I may have gently nudged this along with a few friendly calls. Turns out the HOA had cut corners. Big ones. The kind that make county clerks twitch. An inspector showed up within a week. Clipboard. Camera. Neutral expression that screamed, "I hate my job, but I love justice." He asked to speak to the property owner who authorized the illegal gate. Karen met him at the curb in a tennis skirt and too much perfume. I watched from a distance, sipping iced coffee and pretending to rake gravel. Their conversation escalated quickly. I heard fragments like unlawful easement, unauthorized surveillance, and "that's not how property lines work, ma'am." Karen tried to argue. Of course she did. She even dragged out one of her poorly highlighted zoning maps, like it was her secret weapon. The inspector was unmoved. He issued a citation right then and there. Multiple violations. Then he walked up my driveway, shook my hand, and said, "Sorry you're dealing with this circus." I offered him a goat as a thank you. He declined but chuckled. Now, if you think Karen took this as a sign to stop, you clearly haven't been paying attention. A few days later, flyers started appearing in mailboxes up and down the road. Black and white, poorly photocopied, with giant block letters. Warning, rogue rancher threatens community standards. There was even a grainy photo of me at the feed store looking like I'd just won a chili cook-off. Underneath it, do not engage. He is hostile to HOA authority and refuses to cooperate with local beautification efforts. One neighbor, Frank, retired Navy and chronic lawnmower fixer, brought the flyer over and asked if I'd signed up for a Western reenactment society. We laughed for 10 straight minutes. Another neighbor, Sheila, suggested we all wear t-shirts that said Rogue Rancher Posse. And just like that, I had allies. Turns out, I wasn't the only one fed up with Karen's clipboard crusade. Several homeowners had their own horror stories. Mandatory rosebush regulations, citations for lawn chairs that clashed with architectural intent, and HOA wellness visits that involved Karen inspecting garages for organized storage. So we formed a plan. We called it Operation Paper Jam. Every neighbor she had ever bothered, and some she hadn't, requested copies of the HOA's founding charter, amendment procedures, financial disclosures, and minutes from every meeting in the last year. We submitted them all in the same week. Legally, she had to comply within 30 days. Then we followed up with more requests. We asked about line item budgets for flower bed expenses, gate maintenance, and morale restoration activities. Karen buckled. The documents she sent back were a disaster. Inconsistent accounting, missing signatures, and what looked like a $900 community unity charge that was just labeled wine. That's when Frank made a glorious discovery. Buried in the fine print of the HOA bylaws was a clause that allowed for a vote of no confidence and forced leadership re-election, with just a 35% member signature threshold. We had that in 2 days. The special meeting was held in Karen's driveway, under a pop-up tent she'd probably bought to celebrate her own unearned power. She showed up dressed like she was attending a royal wedding. I showed up in boots, a straw hat, and a Rogue Rancher Posse t-shirt Sheila had ironed the night before. It wasn't even close. Karen was voted out 17-3. She tried to argue that the vote was invalid because the rancher doesn't count, to which Frank replied, "Maybe not for your board, but we sure as hell counted him when your car was blocking his driveway." She stormed off, again. Pattern detected. But even dethroned, Karen still had one card left to play. One final, desperate swing to reclaim her fantasy fiefdom. And she made sure it landed hard. The next morning, I got served. Not breakfast. Not legal papers. No. Karen showed up in person, knocked on my gate post with the fury of someone who'd just been denied a refund at Bed Bath & Beyond, and declared, "I'm suing you for property defamation." I blinked. "That's not a real thing." "It will be," she snarled, "when I'm done with you." And with that, she drove off in her newly recovered Audi, the one still sporting a goat hoof print on the hood, leaving behind a trail of dust and delusion. I knew then it was time to end this. Not with anger, not with threats, but with a move so clean, so absolutely brutal in its simplicity, even Karen wouldn't see it coming. Karen said she was suing me for property defamation, still not a real thing. But I wasn't about to correct her, not yet. Instead, I smiled, tipped my hat, and said, "Looking forward to it." Let her marinate in that. Now here's the thing. People like Karen, they're not driven by rules. They're driven by control. And when they lose control, real, undeniable, social control, they go one of two ways: public apology or public meltdown. Karen chose meltdown. She doubled down like a blackjack player with a losing hand and a margarita. I started getting letters, now hand-delivered by what I can only assume were her last remaining loyalists. She accused me of harassment, slander, rural tyranny, which I still want on a t-shirt, and interference with community cohesion. But here's the twist. All those letters? All that posturing? She was sending them from an address that wasn't hers. Turns out Karen had been operating her HOA enforcement division from a separate property that, according to the county, wasn't even zoned for administrative use. So I got curious. I filed a quiet inquiry with the county zoning board. Just an innocent citizen concerned about improper use of residential property for quasi-governmental operations. They don't take kindly to that sort of thing. Less than a week later, Karen got slapped with a zoning investigation. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Remember the HOA's gate? The illegal one I had removed? Well, I'd kept the pieces. And with a little creative welding and some leftover paint, I built something magical. A rustic, steel-framed lawn ornament with a wooden plaque that read, "Here lies the authority of Karen. May her clipboard rest in pieces." I installed it right on the edge of my land, in full view of the Cedar Ridge entrance sign. The reaction was everything. Cars slowed down to gawk. Neighbors laughed. Someone, I still don't know who, left a bouquet of sunflowers at the base like it was a memorial. Karen, of course, went ballistic. She called the sheriff. Again, Deputy Morales showed up, looked at the sign, looked at me, and asked, "Did you weld a memorial to her ego?" Figured I'd give her legacy a place to rest. He coughed to cover a laugh. Technically, not illegal. Just real petty. I prefer the term symbolic. Morales tipped his hat and drove off, probably to go tell everyone at the station. The fallout? Glorious. Karen's reign collapsed faster than a folding chair at a barbecue. The HOA, now free of her influence, voted to disband the enforcement committee entirely. They redirected funds into fixing actual community issues, like drainage, lighting, and a new playground. A few neighbors even came up to thank me, offering fresh eggs, smoked jerky, and one lady baked a pecan pie that made me consider marriage. But the real ending? That came quietly. One morning, about 2 weeks after her zoning violation was posted publicly, Karen's house went up for sale. No announcement. No grand farewell. She left the way she lived, full of self-importance, zero accountability. The for sale sign had a QR code and a slogan that made me snort laugh. A quiet, peaceful neighborhood with strong community values. I left her a little goodbye gift on her doorstep. A mason jar of sweet tea, a copy of Zoning Laws for Dummies, and a note that said, "Next time ask first. Sincerely, the Rogue Rancher." Final score? Ranch, 1, Karen, Toad. As for me, I got my driveway back. I got my peace back. And best of all, I got a custom t-shirt from Sheila that reads, "Agricultural Intimidator. Estimate, 2023. I wear it every Tuesday when I walk Marvin past the now Karen-less neighborhood." Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are watching from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.